Bill 2021 report stage.
Report and final stage.
This is the report and final stages. That the bill be received for final consideration. Is that agreed? Senator Martin. Agreed. Next stage. Now.
Is Senator Martin proposing?
Senator Martin.
Yes.
Next stage. Now.
Is he proposing that next stage?
You're proposing, Senator Martin, that the next stage be now.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that agreed? That the bill do now pass. Is that agreed? Agreed. Right. Senator Martin, you wish to say a few words?
I'm going to ask the Green Party Group Leader to lead off.
Thanks for coming in, Minister. And first of all, I want to thank my colleague, Senior Senator Vincent Martin, for his work on this bill. In fact, he has brought in more bills to the House in the lifetime of this government than any other senator, in double figures, I believe, in just 4 short years, which has to be commended. And yeah, look, it's good to use the House. We're legislators, we're able to bring in bills. So I want to thank Vincent Martin for being outstanding in his work to date on bringing in bills. As Senior Counsel, he is well able. And also just to refer to today's bill, look, we all talk about the bees. You know, it's great to say the bees are great, and we put up signs saying leave flowers for the bees and all that, but we have to have real action around our native black honeybee, because it is under serious threat, especially during lockdown. Everybody went mad for becoming beekeepers overnight, and a lot of them weren't aware of the importance of only dealing with native bees, and we saw a lot of imported bees coming in. And unfortunately, those bees will basically dilute the indigenous bee, and that is of a serious concern today, which is the main purpose of this bill. Also to note that Malta, Estonia, France and Finland are all looking to Ireland to see what we do about this, as they also have huge issues with their indigenous bees. Slovenia actually set a precedent in 2008 by banning imports of all honeybees. They have protection of their native stock, which is what we're after today. Did you know that the Irish honeybee has shorter legs, a hairier body, and a shorter tongue? Our bees know how to ration their food in our weather conditions, which is amazing, whereas the imported bees do not know how to do that. So very, very clever, very, very, very important that we protect them. The native Irish honeybee, Apis mellifera, also called the black bee or the dark European honeybee, was originally widespread throughout the whole of Northern Europe, but sadly is no longer prevalent there now due to hybridization and other subspecies. Scientific research and DNA analysis has confirmed the Irish strain to be both pure and distinct. Like champagne or camembert cheese, they are protected, and we need the same for our honeybee. Thankfully, the black bee is still alive in Ireland and is the one kept by most beekeepers, but it is severely threatened due to hybridization with imported non-native subspecies, as well as the effects of diseases that may be imported by the non-native bees. Along with other bees and pollinators generally, it is struggling due to habitat loss, pesticide use and intensive agriculture. Sadly, 1/3 of all our Ireland's bees are at risk of extinction. And I suppose people don't seem to make the link. People just think, oh, the Greens and bees, God, they're always on buzzing about bees. But at the end of the day, we're not growing any food in Ireland if we don't have our pollinators. And our bees are the ones who play the most important role in pollinating. Because even a spud or a carrot, for it to grow to fruit, has to be pollinated. So if we don't have good pollinators, we can't grow any food. And that is a huge concern, because for years now we have been mass producing genetically modified and pesticide sprayed foods only to a large scale, and our small food producers are struggling. Now actually the Minister of the House today has done huge work in supporting organic growers and small producers, but they need our support and the bees need our support, and they have no voice of their own. And so we want to be the voice of the native Irish honeybee today. I want to thank all the people in the audience, because they're all campaigners, part of the Irish Honeybee Association, and have inspired me for years. And I think it's great they all made the time to come down here today. And I'll leave the rest to my very able Senator colleague. But let's just do the right thing by the native Irish bees, please. Gormagat.
Just to point out that you've very ably, and your colleagues, put forward your case, and the bill has actually passed. So it's just a brief few comments I'm looking for, just out of respect to you and everyone that put work into this.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Senator.
Kevin, people in the audience actually as well.
Senator.
Thank you, Lasca Hirlich. And when the Seanad was debating this bill at earlier stages, second and committee stage, it was known at that stage that Ireland had a significant population of Apis mellifera, a subspecies that used to be very common in Northern Europe but was rapidly becoming extinct. But we were one of the last strongholds, and because it's become so endangered in other places. Now, our native bee lives in the wild as well, and that's a very rare occurrence across Europe. However, the precious population had become under threat by an increase in imports of honeybees subspecies from abroad. These imported honeybees are very different, as Senator Garvey said, and are not adapted to Irish conditions. They do not survive the winter and have less success at mating in our cool, wet summers. They require much more feeding than native honeybees. They can still, however, breed with our honeybee, creating hybrids, and that's where the problem lies. A paper published in 2023 showed an increase in hybridisation in the wild colonies, well above what had been reported before, and this was thought to be a result of a large increase in the honeybee imports during the pandemic. Last week, a paper was published as recently as last week, and this is why I'd like to bring it to the attention of the Seanad and the Minister, and it's good to see you today, Minister. You've always been very accessible and approachable and helpful in this. But last week's paper, and I think this is part of what you commissioned to be done and procured a process, but it's in the public domain from last week, the paper published by Alex Valentine, a PhD student at the University of Galway, where she showed for the first time that Ireland boasts a distinct version of Apis mellifera resulting from its adaptation to the island of Ireland. The honeybee here has a distinct body, having shorter legs and a smaller, broader, hairier body. These features are thought to keep the colony warm in our cool winter. But the bees in Ireland also have a distinctive wing structure that might help it fly in windier, drizzly conditions. It also has a shorter proboscis, which is the mouth, for drinking nectar, which may mean that it is very well adapted to certain plants common in Ireland. So Ireland has what is called a distinct ecosystem of honeybee. Sadly, this paper published last week also shows a high level of hybridisation than previous, with now approximately 25% of the colonies sampled in a study of 500 colonies from beekeepers around Ireland showing some hybridisation. About 8% were heavily hybridised, while the rest showed low levels of hybridisation. This is really worrying. What is also interesting is that the two separate surveys of Irish beekeepers suggest that just over 5% of the beekeepers imported queens. This suggests that a relatively small number of beekeepers that import bees are having a hugely disproportionate adverse impact on beekeepers who prefer to keep the native bee and our population and conserve our population of the native Irish honeybee. EU law allows for member states to protect biodiversity if it is under threat by trade. Non-tariff measures such as stopping imports are a common way to do this. Continued imports of such invasive subspecies can result in homogenisation of honeybees right across Europe, wiping out the traits that have allowed honeybees to survive in local climates for thousands of years, and may result in honeybees being totally reliant on humans for survival. Research strongly indicates that the best bees for apiculture are local bees, and local bees do not stand a chance of surviving if we keep allowing imports of invasive species from abroad. I know you've commissioned the report, Minister, and I'd like you might update us on where that lies. I believe delays are dangerous. I'm also conscious that permanent governments are not necessarily have a reputation for Speedy Gonzales and are trailblazers. I know they're ultra careful and genuine and dedicated in their efforts, but this requires a state of emergency. And I am calling on the Department of Agriculture to respond appropriately in such an urgent form. And finally, I would say that importing other subspecies threatens the genetic integrity of the black bee, losing forever an element of our biodiversity. So, you know, we have a chance to do something very important today, but it's only halfway there. It's a red letter day to get it through this House. But, you know, this is part of who we are. 3000 BC, there are traces of beeswax in the west of Ireland. I'd like to thank the Native Irish Honeybee Society, who have fought this so hard for so long. Many are in the visitors' gallery today. My own Kildare, North Kildare Beekeeping Association. Colm O'Neill was a committee member and a pillar of the association and is still involved as an active member. Our chairperson, Vincent Lenihan, our treasurer, Pat Winters, our honorary secretary, Anne Ryan, and membership secretary, Mario Driscoll, and the committee members, which epitomise the volunteerism. And this is a very vibrant society, and I did a podcast with them recently, celebrating their existence and their achievements. Committee members include Paula Summers-Kennedy, Cindy Collins, John Lennon, John Byrne, Bridget Monaghan, Sean Byrne, Erwin Bannon, who is in the podcast, Kevin Ford, who's present today in the gallery, and Michael Beattie. You are the true heroes of the day, but we're not there yet, and I know you won't let complacency step in, but today is a very positive step forward because the government is not going to stop this. We're going to get it fully through every legislative stage in the Seanad, and I can assure you I'll keep a very firm eye on this. We have to finish the job we started out on a number of years ago. Today represents real progress, but there's more to do. Gurumila Margaret.
Senator Martin.
Senator Garvey has been a constant and enthusiastic supporter of this bill from the get-go, as has Alice Mary Higgins. It's a cross-party support. I got a senator from every grouping to sign it. But my own, the Green Party deputy leader and a leader of the Seanad, Senator Garvey, who's big into rural development and supports small businesses, and she has a fair few beekeepers down in Clare, I can assure you, has been a constant support. I'd like to thank
Senator
you personally
Martin,
as well.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we're anxious. This has passed the Senate, and we're anxious to get the bill buzzing its way to the Dáil.
Very good.
Get it into legislation as quickly as possible. Senator Alice Mary
I will be very brief. I'm very proud to be a co-sponsor of the bill brought forward by Senator Martin. I think it's a really good piece of work. It's something that we'll have, I hope, and I hope it is speeded through the other house. But it will affect every corner, every hedgerow across Ireland. If we look to something with implications that are wide-reaching, it is this legislation, and it is. You mentioned two halves in terms of the Seanad Dáil, but there are also two parts to this. There is, when we look to protection of our pollinators, and the vital importance of pollinators has been spoken about for horticulture and for others, but they are also just a crucial part of knowing that we're living in a space that is alive and living in a country that is alive with an ecosystem that is alive, biodiversity. There are the two parts. There is the protection of the pollinators and there's the protection of habitat. I think it was very eloquently described how perfectly the native Irish honeybee is adapted to our climate and to our habitat environment. And that I've often engaged with the Minister on some of the other measures that I believe really are crucial in terms of protecting and enhancing our habitat and the environment, that environment to which the native Irish honeybee is so well adapted, is in itself under threat, unfortunately, in terms of, especially when we look to the wild and the wild spaces and the ecosystems across Ireland. But alongside that is the protection of the bee itself. And I just 2 points which I think are very important as this bill goes forward to its next stage. I know there was discussion of where it fits within EU law, and it seemed to me to be explicitly very clear in terms of the protective principle applying in terms of EU law, that there absolutely is a clear remit that allows for appropriate actions in the horticultural area and others, such as the measures to protect against hybridisation. And we've seen not just the impact of hybridisation is one of the impacts of the importation of other bees, but we've also seen pathogens and disease that has often come attached to those importations. And I would just note as a final point, the Sustainable Development Goals, which Ciara you or I talk about a lot, but it is in fact included within that wonderful blueprint of the Sustainable Development Goals explicitly. Target 15.81 of the Sustainable Development Goals says, as a state, and these are of course the goals the state has signed up to and it helped negotiate, but as an explicit test, which is the proportion of countries adopting relevant national legislation
and adequately resourcing the prevention or control of invasive alien species. So this is something we've actually explicitly signed up to do, is to bring forward exactly this kind of legislation, and it's under the Sustainable Development Goals target. So I think it's, I really would encourage every support for this bill as it goes forward to the other House. And I want to again commend Senator Martin and indeed all those advocates and all those who work with the native Irish honeybee across the country. Thank you.
Minister.
Laska here, look, if you could bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'll just I think make some final statements, and then you can be on your way. I really want to start by thanking my party colleague, Senator Vincent P. Martin, for his work on this bill. It's been extensive, and certainly want to extend my thanks also to Senator Roisin Garvey and indeed Senator Alice Mary Higgins for their continued interest in this important area. I want to welcome our beekeepers to the gallery as well. I know this is an important day for you and your commitment to your very special species, Apis mellifera. I want to acknowledge again, as I have done before in this House, the important contribution the native Irish honeybee makes to agriculture and to biodiversity, both as a honey producer and as a pollinator. I'd like to reiterate my full support, and indeed the support of my department, for the overall objective of the bill, that being the protection of the native Irish honeybee. I think an objective we all share in this House. This government has provided extensive support to raise awareness among beekeepers about the importance of the native Irish honeybee. My department has also provided funding through the Scheme for the Conservation of Genetic Resources and the Scheme of Investment Aid for the Development of the Commercial Horticulture Sector to support beekeepers to source native bees and to assist bee breeding activities that ensure such native bees are available to meet beekeeper demand. By way of an update, colleagues will recall, as Senator Martin indicated, that during the last Seanad debate on this private member's bill, I outlined concerns shared by my department and the Office of the Attorney-General regarding the bill's compatibility with EU law, in particular Articles 34 and 36 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. While we all recognise the need to protect the native Irish honeybee, the advice from the Office of the Attorney-General at the time considered that a total ban on the importation of certain species of honeybee was likely to face significant scrutiny on proportionality grounds, having regard to the case law of the European Court. The Office of the Attorney-General considered that an evaluation in terms of proportionality and necessity by way of a scientific assessment was required to substantiate the specific measures proposed in the bill. I committed to the House that the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine would procure that independent scientific assessment as a matter of urgency. I'm pleased to say that we did sign a 12-month contract with the University of Galway for the provision of these research services in October of last year. And my understanding is that this research project will conclude very shortly in a matter of weeks. The view of the European Commission is also important to highlight in this regard if we are to succeed in our common objective of protecting this wonderful species. The European Commission was asked by way of a written parliamentary question if it would object to Ireland imposing a ban on the movement of non-native honeybees into Ireland, and if it is open to Ireland to impose an interim ban pending the completion of the scientific review. The response from the Commission stated that the restrictions to the movement of non-native honeybees due to reasons other than transmittable animal diseases into Ireland from other member states should not be decided without a thorough assessment. So that's why it's so welcome that this necessary thorough assessment, is almost at the point of completion, following which government will be in a position to take updated advice from the Office of the Attorney-General in respect of the compatibility of the bill with the EU single market rules. But I think we're happy at this stage to move it on. As it has already moved and already passed this stage now, but I do welcome the input of the senators throughout the duration of this bill. And yes, it's going to pass the final, it has passed the final stages in the Seanad today, and I just want to thank everyone for their inputs and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Senator Martin, Senator Garvey, and your colleagues, and Senator Higgins, and your colleagues in the gallery for all your work in this regard. So we've sent it on now to the Dáil, so it's up to them to deal with it. Could I ask Senator Garvey to move the suspension of the House until 4 p.m?
I move the suspension of the House till 4 p.m.
Thank you. House stands suspended until 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Agreed.